particularly interested in regard to the origin of psychological disorder and what is necessary to heal that disorder. Perhaps we could start with the question of what is the source of psychological disorder?
Yes, sir. And I would like to ask, if I may, what do we mean by disorder? When the whole world, as one knows, as one sees it from continent to continent, there is a great deal of disorder.
Yes.
Economically, socially.
This is one of a series of dialogues between J. Krishnamurti, David Bohm, Rupert Sheldrake, and John Hidley. The purpose of these discussions is to explore essential questions about the mind. What is psychological disorder, and what is required for fundamental psychological change? J. Krishnamurti is a religious philosopher, author, and educator who has written and given lectures on these subjects for many years. He has founded elementary and secondary schools in the United States, England, and India. David Bohm is professor of theoretical physics at Birkbeck College, London University in England. He has written numerous books concerning theoretical physics and the nature of consciousness. Professor Bohm and Mr. Krishnamurti have held previous dialogues on many subjects. Rupert Sheldrake is a biologist whose recently published book proposes that learning in some members of a species affects the species as a whole. Dr. Sheldrake is presently consulting plant physiologist to the International Crops Research Institute in Hyderabad, India. John Hidley is a psychiatrist in private practice who has been associated with the Krishnamurti School in Ojai, California for the past 6 years. In the culture, there are conflicting points of view about the proper approach to dealing with one's own or others' psychological problems. And the underlying principles from which these approaches are drawn are in even greater conflict. Without invoking a narrow or specialized point of view, can the mind, the nature of consciousness, its relationship to human suffering, and the potential for change be understood? These are the issues to be explored in these dialogues.
Is disorder the very nature of the self?
Why do you say that? Why do you ask that? Is it the nature of the self?
Isn't the self, the me, the ego,
Yeah.
whatever word we like to use, isn't that divisive? Isn't that exclusive, isolating process, this self-centered activity which causes so much disorder in the world? Isn't that the origin, the beginning of all disorder?
The origin being selfish activity.
Yeah, self-centered activity at all levels of life.
Yes, and certainly that's the way in which the patient comes in. He's concerned about his depression.
Yes.
Or his fear.
His fulfillment, his joy, his suffering, his
Yes.
agony, and so on. It's all self-centered.
Yes.
So I'm asking, if I may, is not the self the beginning of all disorder? The self, I mean, the egotistic attitude towards life, this sense of individual emphasis on the individual, his salvation, his fulfillment, his happiness, his anxiety, and so on and so on.
Well, I don't know that it's the source of the thing. It's certainly the way he experiences it and presents it. He presents it as his.
Yes, but I mean, if you go all over the world, it is the same expression. It is the same way of living.
Uh-huh.
They're all living their own personal lives, unrelated to another. Though they may be married, they may do all kinds of things, but they're really functioning from an isolated center.
And that center, that self, is the source of the difficulty in the relationship, and the difficulty that creates the symptoms.
And I wonder if the psychologists have tackled that problem. that the self is the origin, the beginning of all contradiction, divisive activity, self-centered activity, and so on?
No. I think that the way the psychiatrists and psychologists look at this is that the problem is to have an adequate self.
Adequate self.
Yeah.
Which means what?
Defining normality.
A self that is functioning
sufficiently.
Efficiently.
Yeah.
Which means furthering more misery.
Well, I don't feel that the psychiatrists would necessarily agree with you on that last point, that they might feel that a proper or properly organized self could get together with other properly organized selves and make an orderly society.
Yes.
And you're saying, as I understand it, something quite different.
Yes.
Which is,
but
no self can do it. No structure of the self can make order.
That's right.
Right.
The very nature of the self must intrinsically bring disorder.
Yes, but I'm not sure this will be clear to, how can that be made clear, evident?
Well, it seems to me that this is the context is even broader than that of psychology, because in the world we have all sorts of things which are not human beings with selves. There are animals and plants and all the forces of nature and all the stars and so on. Now we see disorder in nature too. It may not be consciously experienced, and a cat that's suffering, or a lion that's suffering, or a mouse, or even an earthworm that's suffering may not come into a psychiatrist's office and say so. Mm-hmm. But the fact is that there seems to be disorder and conflict within nature. There are conflicts between forces of nature, of inanimate things, earthquakes and so on. There are conflicts within the animal world. There are even conflicts within the plant world. Plants compete for light, and the bigger ones get higher up in the forest, and the smaller ones get shaded out and die. There's conflict between predators and prey. All animals live on other plants or animals. There's every kind of conflict. There's disease, there's suffering, there's parasites. All these things occur in the natural world. So is the context of psychological suffering and disorder something that's merely something to do with the mind, or is it something to do with the whole of nature, the fact that the world is full of separate things, and that if we have a world which is full of separate things, and these separate things are all interacting with each other, that there's always going to be conflict in such a world?
I was wondering, is it clear that there is that kind of disorder in nature, or would we say that disorder is only in human consciousness?
Yes.
Now, that is what the phenomena that you have described, are they actually disorder? That's a question we have to go into. Or what is the difference between the disorder in consciousness and whatever is going on in nature?
I saw the other night on the television a cheetah chasing a deer, killing it. Would you consider that disorder?
Well, I would consider that it involves suffering.
Suffering, yes. So, are we saying that it is natural in nature and in human beings to suffer, to go through agonies, to live in disorder?
Yes.
So, what do you say to that, sir?
Well, I think that's the way it's looked at by the therapists. To some degree, it's felt that this arises in the course of development, and that some people have it more than others, suffering. Some people are more fortunate in their upbringing, for example, or in their heredity. But it isn't questioned that that may not be necessary in any absolute sense. Well, that's what we're questioning.
That's what I would like to question too.
Yeah.
Dr. Sheldrake says it is accepted. It's like that.
Mm-hmm.
Human condition is to suffer, to struggle, to have anxiety, pain, disorder. That's his condition.
It's certainly necessary to have physical suffering. People get sick, they die. And we're wondering whether or not psychological suffering is analogous to that, or whether there's something intrinsically different about it.
No, sir. I do question seriously whether human beings must inevitably live in this state.
Mm-hmm.
Everlastingly suffering, everlastingly going through this agony of life. Is that necessary? Is it right that they should?
It's certainly not desirable that they should.
No, no. If we accept that it's inevitable,
Mm-hmm.
as many people do, then there is no answer to it.
Mm-hmm.
But is it inevitable?
Well, physical suffering is inevitable.
Yes,
Illness,
but I mean,
death.
yes, sir, the physical suffering is old age,
Yes.
accidents, disease.
Maybe we increase the physical suffering because of our psychological problems.
That's it, that's it. So a mother bearing babies,
Mm.
she goes through terrible time delivering them. Strangely, she forgets that pain. She's the next baby. Another baby.
Mm.
In India, as you know, the mothers have about 7 or 8 children.
Mm.
If they remember the first agony of it, they will never have children.
Mm.
I've talked to several mothers about it. They seem to totally forget it.
Mm.
It's a blank after suffering. So, is there a activity in the psyche that helps the suffering to be wiped away? Recently, personally, I've had an operation, for minor operation. There was plenty of pain, quite a lot. And it went on considerably. It's out of my mind, completely gone.
Mm.
So is it the psychological nourishing of a remembrance of pain, you follow?
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Which gives us a sense of continuity in pain.
So you're saying that perhaps the physical suffering in the world is not the source of the psychological suffering, but that the psychological suffering is an action of its own.
Yes, that. You've had toothache, I'm sure.
Yes, I've
You've
forgotten
forgotten it.
Mm.
Why? If we accept pain is inevitable,
Mm.
suffering is inevitable, you must continue with it. You must sustain it.
No, we have to accept that it's inevitable that it happens sometimes. But we can forget physical pain. Can we forget the kind of psychological pains caused by natural things like loss, death of people?
Yeah, I will come to that. I come to you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a problem with my wife if I'm married. If I'm not, but suppose I'm married.
Mm-hmm.
I come because I can't get on with her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she can't get on with me.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a problem, a relationship. I come to you. How will you help me? This is a problem everybody is facing.
Yes.
Either divorce
Yeah.
or adjustment.
Or
And is that possible when each one wants to fulfill, wants to go his own way, pursue his own desires, his own ambitions, and so on?
you're saying that the problem arises out of the fact that they each have their own interests at heart.
No, it's not interest. It's like, so we are all terribly individualistic.
Yes.
I
Yes.
want my way and my wife wants her way. Deeply.
And we see that our needs are in conflict for some reason.
That's all. Right away you begin. After the first few days or few months of relationship, pleasure and all that, that soon wears off and we are stuck.
Okay, that's the same problem then with the mother raising this child and making it her toy. Her needs are in conflict with the needs of the child.
And please, perhaps you go on.
No.
The mother, her mother was also like that.
Yeah?
And the whole world is like that, sir. It's not the mother.
Mm-hmm.
So when I come to you with my problem, you say it's the mother.
No, I wouldn't
I
say
object
it's...
to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the mother.
No, I'm just pushing it.
Uh-huh. You're saying that it's a much broader problem than...
Much deeper problem.
Okay.
Then the mother, or the mother didn't put the baby on the right pot or something. That's
Yeah. Right. That it appears that the needs are in conflict.
No, I wouldn't call needs are in conflict. Basically, they're divisive, self-centered activity.
Mm-hmm.
That inevitably must bring contradiction and, you know, the whole business of relationship and conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Because each one wants his pleasure.
There's self-centered activity on the part of the person who's raising the child or on the part of the person who is in the relationship, married. The child is the victim of that.
The child?
The child is the victim of that.
Of course.
And then grows up to perpetuate it.
And the mother's father, they were like that too.
Yes. Now, why does it have to happen that way? Are we saying that's the way it is in nature? Or are we saying that...
No.
Well, I mean, there are certain conflicts in nature. For example, among troops of gorillas or baboons, take baboons, or even chimpanzees. There's a conflict among the males. Often the strongest male wishes to monopolize all the attractive females. Now, some of the younger males want to get in on the act as well. They try going off with these females, and this younger male will fight them and beat them off. So they'll be kept out of this. This selfish activity of this one male keeps most of the females to himself. The same occurs in red deer, where the stag will monopolize the females. Now, these are examples of conflict in the animal kingdom which are quite needless. There'd be enough food for these hens without pecking each other. Now, these are not exceptions. We can find this kind of thing throughout the animal kingdom. So I don't think that the origin of this kind of selfish conflict is something just to do with human societies and the way they're structured. I think we can see in biological nature this kind of thing.
Are you saying that as we are the result of the animal, as we human beings evolved from the animal, we have inherited all those pecking order?
Yes, I think we've inherited a lot of animal tendencies from our animal forebears. And I think that many of these show up in these psychological problems.
Yes, but is it necessary that we should continue that way? We are thoughtful, we are ingenious in our inventions, extraordinarily capable in certain directions. Why should we not also say this, we won't have this? The way we live, let's change it.
Well, we can say that. Many people have said it.
I know many people have said it.
But without very much effect.
Why?
Well, that indeed is a question. Is it that we're so completely trapped in the ancestry of the past?
Or so heavily conditioned that it's impossible to be free?
Well, there are two possible kinds of conditioning. One is the genuine biological conditioning that comes from our animal heritage, which means that we inherit all these tendencies.
Let's accept that.
Now that is undoubtedly extremely strong and goes right back into our animal past.
Right.
The other kind of conditioning is the kind of argument that I'm putting forward, perhaps. The argument, this has always been so. Human nature is like this. There have always been wars and conflict and all that kind of thing, and therefore there always will be. And that the most we can do is try to minimize these, and that there will always be psychological conflicts within families and between people, and that the most we can do is try and minimize these, or at least make them livable with.
Modify it, but you cannot fundamentally change it.
Yes, I'm saying this is a possible kind of conditioning. The belief that we can't really change it radically is another kind of conditioning. I'm a victim of it myself. So, I don't know if it's possible to get out of it.
And that's what I want to discuss. Whether it's possible to change the human condition and not accept it. Say, as most philosophers, the existentialists and others say, your human nature is conditioned. You cannot change. You can modify it. You can be less selfish, less painful, psychologically have problems, bear up with pain. This is natural, this is there. We have inherited from the animals. We'll go on like this for the rest of our lives and for the lives to come. Not reincarnation, lives of other people's lives. It'll be our condition, human condition. Do we accept that? Or do we inquire, shall we inquire into whether it's possible to change this condition?
Yes, I think we should inquire into that.
If you say it cannot be changed, then the argument is over.
All right, so I'll say that I don't know.
No, not saying.
No, I'd like it to be changed. I deeply want it to be changed. So I think that this question of inquiring into the possibility is extremely important. But one of my points, to go back to the conditioning point, is that a lot of this conditioning is deep in our biological nature. And people who wish to change it merely by changing the structures of society
I'm not talking, of course.
Are operating at too superficial a level.
Like the communists want to change it.
But the idea that you can do it by just changing the environment is what the communists thought and still think. And in a sense, the experiment has been tried, and we can see the results in various communist countries. And of course, believers in that would say, well, they haven't tried properly, or they betrayed the revolution, and so on. But nevertheless, the basis of that belief is that the source of all the evils and the problems is in society, and by changing society, man is perfectible.
But society is formed by us.
Yes.
And by us it's going to be changed. So we haven't changed ourselves. We depend on society to change us.
Yes.
And society is what we have made. So we are caught in that trap.
Yes. Exactly. And if we start off with a heritage which is built into us, inherited, which comes from our biological past, and if we start with that, and we start with these societies that also have bad effects, some of them, and to varying degrees, and we just try to change the society, the other part, the inherited part, is still there. And
but cannot those also be transformed? I may have inherited what? Violence from the from the apes and so on and so on. Can't I change that? The inherited biological conditioning, surely that can be transformed.
Well, all societies, surely, seek to transform these biological drives that we have, and all processes of bringing children up in all societies seek to bring those drives within the control of the society. Otherwise, you'd have complete anarchy. However, these drives are always brought within certain social forms, and individual aggression is obviously discouraged in most societies. But can we say, is it really transformed? Doesn't it just come out again in the aggression of the society as a whole, and war and so on? So we can see that these things are transformed by societies, these basic drives that we inherit.
But why do we... Sorry, what?
I was going to ask you, you say they really haven't been transformed, but I think you're meaning by transformed a fundamental change, and not just a superficial change or a transfer of the object of aggression from other individuals to other groups. So if you talk of transformation, you would say really that they would more or less go away, right? That's how I understand it.
Well, they'd be changed from one form to another. That's
no, but
I mean.
I don't think that's the meaning which Krishnaji is using for the word transform, but essentially, can't we be free of them, you see?
Yes, that's right. So, why do you divide, if I may ask, society and being? As though society was something outside, which is influencing me, conditioning me. But I have my parents, grandparents, so on, past generations, have created that society. So I'm part of that society. I am society. Why do we separate it?
I think the reason why we separate it is that there are different kinds of society. If I'd been born in India instead of in England, I would have grown up in a very different way, with a different set of attitudes. And because we can think of ourselves growing up in different kinds of societies, and we'd be different if we had, that's why in thought, I think, we have the idea that society and me are not exactly the same. We'd always be in one society or another. So society as a whole, all societies taken together, would always, we would only exist within society. But any particular society is in a sense an accident of our birth or upbringing.
But even that society is part of us.
Oh yes, I mean through growing up in it, it becomes part of us and we become part of it.
I want to abolish this idea in discussion, this separation from me and society. I am society, I am the world. I'm the result of all these influences, conditioning, whether in the East or in the West or in South or North, it's all part of conditioning.
Yes.
So we are attacking the conditioning, not where you are born or East or West.
Oh yes, the problem would be conditioning of every kind, our biological conditioning, our conditioning from society.
That's right.
Yes.
So personally, I don't separate myself from society. I am society. I have created society through my anxiety, through my desire for security, through my desire to have power, and so on and so on. Like the animal. It's all biologically inherited, and also my own individualistic activity has created this society. So I'm asking, I'm conditioned that way. Is it not possible to be free of it? Free of my conditioning? If you say it's not possible, then it's finished.
Well, I would say first that it's not possible to be free of all of the conditioning. I mean, certain of it is necessary biologically, the conditioning that makes my heart beat, my lungs operate, and all that.
I admit all that.
Now, then the question is, how far can you take that, the necessary conditioning?
Dr. Hidley was saying, that's his whole point. I am conditioned to suffer, psychologically, right, sir?
Yes.
Or I'm conditioned to go through great conflict in my relationship with my wife or father, whatever it is. And you're saying either we investigate into that and free ourselves from that, or accept it and modify it.
That's right. And
now, which is it, that's what I want, which is it as a psychologist you maintain? If I may put such a question to you.
Yeah. Well, I think generally the approach is to attempt to modify it, to make the person, to help the patient make it work more effectively.
Why? I hope you don't mind my asking this question.
No, I think that part of the reason for that is that it's seen as biological and therefore fixed. A person is born with a certain temperament. his drives are the drives of the animal. And I think also because it isn't clear to therapists that the problem can be dealt with as a whole. The problem seems, it is clear that it can be dealt with as particulars.
Is it, I'm not asking an impudent question, I hope.
Okay.
Is it the psychologists don't think holistically? Are only concerned with solving individual problems?
Yes, they are concerned with solving individual problems.
So therefore they're not thinking human suffering as a whole.
Right.
A particular suffering of X who is very depressed.
Right. For particular reasons.
For particular reasons.
Right.
We don't inquire into what is depression, why human beings all over the world are depressed.
Or we don't try and tackle that as a single problem. We try and tackle it with this particular individual who comes in.
Therefore, you are still really, if I may point out, I may be wrong,
Yes.
you are emphasizing his particular suffering, and so sustaining it.
Now, can we get clear on that?
I come to you,
Yes.
I'm depressed,
Yes.
for various reasons which you know.
Yes.
And you tell me, by talking to me,
Uh-huh.
etc., you have the whole business of coming to you and all that. You tell me, my depression is the depression of the world.
Yeah, I don't tell you that. I tell you that your depression...
That's what, when you tell me that, are you not helping me to carry on with this individualistic depression? And therefore, my depression, not your depression,
Yes.
is my depression, which I either cherish or want to dissolve.
Yes.
Which means I'm only concerned with myself.
Yes.
Myself, I come back to that.
Yes, it's within the context of yourself.
Self.
Yeah.
So you are helping me to be more selfish, if I may,
Yes.
more self-concerned, more self-committed.
It is approached within the context of the self. But I would think that I'm helping you to be less self-concerned, because when you're not depressed, then you don't have to be self-concerned. You feel better and you're able to relate to people more.
But again, on a very superficial level.
Meaning that I leave the self intact.
Intact.
Yes.
Yes, well, I feel that people generally wouldn't accept this, that the self is not there, you see, which is what you're implying, that the self is rather unimportant, but rather the assumption is that the self is really there and it has to be improved, you see. And if you say
That's it.
A certain amount of self-centeredness, people would say, is normal,
Yes, sir.
it's only to keep it within reason, right?
Right.
Now
Modify selfishness, right? Continue with selfishness,
Yes.
but go slow.
But I think you're saying something which
Right.
is very radical then, because very few people have entertained the notion of no self-centeredness.
That's it.
That's right. It isn't entertained.
Maybe a few, but...
Yeah. For biological reasons and because of the universality of the phenomenon.
Well,
And because it isn't even seen as relevant, really.
I think most people feel that's the only way things are, and that's the only way.
Yeah.
That means status quo, modified status quo.
Yeah.
Yes.
To me, that seems so irrational.
But you must feel that it's possible to be different. You say, at least more than feel, but in some sense there must be some reason why you say this, right?
I see what?
Why you feel so different from other people about it?
It seems so practical. First of all, the way we live is so impractical. The wars, the accumulation of armaments is totally impractical.
That wouldn't be an argument, you see, because people say, we all understand that, but since that's the way we are, there's nothing else is possible. You see, you really are challenging the notion that that is the way we are, or it would have to be.
I don't quite follow this. We are what we are.
If people say we are individuals separate, and there's nothing, we'll just have to fight and make the best of it.
Yes.
But you are saying that something different. I mean, namely, you're not accepting that.
All right. Don't accept it, but will you listen? Will the people who don't accept it, will they give their minds to find out? Right?
Right.
Or say, please, we don't want to listen to you. This is what we think, buzz off. That's what most people do.
Well, this question isn't even raised usually.
Yeah, of course.
Now, why do you think that the selfish activity isn't necessary?
I don't know, sir. First of all, do we accept the condition that we are in? Do we accept it? And say, please, we can only modify it, it can never be changed. It can never be, one can never be free from this anxiety, depression, modified always from agony of life. You follow? This process of going through tortures in oneself. That's normal. Accept it. Modify it. Live a little more quietly, and so on and so on. If you accept that, the argument, we can't, there's no communication between us. But if you say, I know my condition, tell me, let's just talk about whether one can be free from it. Then we have a relationship, then we can communicate with each other. But we say, sorry, shut the door on my face, and it's finished.
So, there are some people who accept this. They say we can't change it. But there are other people, and I would say that some of the most inspiring leaders of the different religions of the world are among them, who have said we can change it.
Yes.
There is a way beyond this.
Yes.
Now, since religions have wide followings, and since their doctrines are widely dispersed, there are in fact large numbers of people in our society, and in every society, who do think it can be changed. Because all religions hold out the prospect of a change, and of going beyond this condition.
Yes. But I would like to know, when you use the word religion, is it the organized religion? Is it the authoritarian religion? Is it the religion of belief, dogma, rituals, all that?
Well,
or religion in the sense, the accumulation of energy to find whether it's possible to be free. You understand my question?
yes. Well, I think the second, but I think that if we look into the history of the organized religions and people within them, we see that much of the inspiration for them was in fact that second kind of religion, which still within their framework still survives, I think. But it's also something which has often been corrupted and debased and turned into yet another system of dogmas, conditioning, and so on. But I think within all religious traditions, that this second kind of religion you talk about has been kept alive. And I think that the impetus in all the great religions of the world has been that vision. It's then been debased and degraded in various ways. But this vision has never left any of these religions. There are still people within them, I think, who still have it. And this is the inner life that keeps them going, over and above the simple political power and all the rest of it.
I know. But suppose a man like me rejects tradition, rejects anything that has been said about truth, about God, whatever it is, the other side. I don't know. The other people say, yes, we have this and that. So how am I, as a human being who has really rejected all this? Tradition, the people who have said there is, and the people who have said that's all nonsense, people who have said we have found that it is, and so on, so on. If you wipe all that out and say, look, I must find out, not as an individual, can I find, can this truth or this bliss, this illumination, can come without depending on all that. See, if I'm anchored, for example, in Hinduism, with all the, not the superficiality of it, not all the rituals and all the superstitions, if I'm anchored in the religious belief of a Hindu, of a real Brahmin, I'm always anchored. And I may go very far, but I'm anchored there. That's not freedom. Because there must be freedom to discover this, or come upon this.
Yes.
So we're going a little bit too far.
No, but I would then go back and say, well, you put forward the question of the man who rejects all these traditions. You said, let us suppose that I'm a man who's rejected all these traditions. I would then say, well, what reason do you have for rejecting all these traditions in such a way?
Well, that seems to be the part of the problem that we've arrived at. If we've said that man is conditioned biologically and socially by his family, the tradition is part of that. We've said that that's the problem that we're up against now. Is it possible for him to change his nature, or do we have to deal with each of these problems particularly as they come up?
Well, what I was saying is that at the inner core of all the great religions of the world is a vision of this possibility of a transformation, whether it's called salvation or liberation or nirvana or what. There's this vision. Now, there have always been people within those religions who've had this vision and lived this vision. Now, they...
Sorry, go on.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
well, perhaps part of your radical rejection of all religion involves denying that. But if so, I would say why? Why should we be so radical as to deny?
I question whether they're really, I may be sacrilegious, I may be an infidel, non-believer. I wonder if I am anchored to a certain organized belief, whether I can ever find the other. If I am a Buddhist, for example, I believe that the Buddha is my savior. Suppose I believe that. And that has been told to me from childhood. My parents have been Buddhists and so on, so on, so on. And as long as I have found that security in that idea, or in that belief, in that person, there's no freedom.
No, but it's possible that you can move beyond that framework, you see. Starting from within it, that you can move beyond.
That means I wipe out everything.
It means you wipe it out. But there's a difference between an approach where you wipe it out from the beginning.
From the beginning I'm talking.
And an approach where you start within it and go beyond it.
You see that? Wait, yes, I know. This well-known argument. Which is important, breaking down all the barriers at the beginning, not at the end. I'm a Hindu. I see what Hinduism is, lots of, all the rest of it. And why should I go through number of years to be ended? Why can't I finish it the first day?
Because I think you'd have to reinvent and rediscover for yourself a great many things that you would be able to get through more quickly if you didn't.
No, his question is, I am a living human being in relationship with him or with her. In that relationship, I'm in conflict. He says, don't go about religion and illumination and nirvana and all the rest of it. Transform this, live rightly here, then the door is open.
Yes, but surely isn't that easier said than done? Easier said than done. I mean,
I know it's easier said than done, therefore, let's find out. Let me find out with him or with you or with her how to live in this world without conflict. Right, sir?
That's what we're asking.
Can I find out? Or is that impossible?
We don't know.
No, therefore we start, we don't know.
Okay.
So let's inquire into that. Because if my relationship with life is not right in course for the moment, how can I find out something that's immensely beyond all this, beyond time, beyond thought, beyond measure? I can't. Still, we have established right relationship between us, which is order. How can I find that which is supreme order? So I must begin with you, not with that. I don't know if you're meeting me.
no, I would have thought that you could easily argue the other way around.
Of course.
Until you have that, you can't get this right, because the whole history of man shows that starting just from...
And therefore you invent that. You invent something illogical, may not be true, maybe just invention of thought, and you imagine that to be order and hope that order will filter into you. It seems so illogical, irrational, whereas this is so rational.
But is it possible?
That is it. Let's find out.
But you've now completely reversed your argument to start with, you see. He started with the patient coming into the psychiatrist's office who wants to get his relationships right, get the human relationships out of this state of disorder and conflict into something that's more
I am
tolerable.
not sure this way, forgive me, doctor, if I'm blundering into where the angels fear to tread.
Okay.
I question whether I'm doing right.
But they're doing just what you said now, starting with the relationship and not going to these bigger questions.
Whether they are really concerned with bringing about a right relationship between human beings, fundamentally, not superficially, just to adjust themselves for the day.
I don't think that you're denying that larger questions are involved in that. You're just saying that we shouldn't invent ideas about what a solution would be like.
Yes. I come to you, sir, let's wait a minute.
Okay.
I come to you with my problem.
Yeah.
I cannot get on with somebody, or I'm terribly depressed, or something dishonest in me. I pretend.
Yeah.
I come to you. You are concerned to tell me, become more honest. But not find out what is real honesty.
And don't we get into the problem of creating the idea of real honesty at this point?
No, it's not an idea. I'm dishonest.
Yes.
You inquire why I'm dishonest.
Yes.
Go penetrate into, disturb me. Don't pacify me.
Yeah.
Don't help me to say, but be a little more honest and a little more this or that, but shake me so that I find out what his real honesty is.
Okay, that's...
I may disturb I may break away from the, you follow, from
Yes.
my conditioning, from my wife, from my parents, anything. You don't disturb me.
No, that's...
That's just my point,
I do disturb you.
partially.
Well, what...
You disturb me in order to conform to little adjustments.
Well, let's look at that.
Sorry.
I disturb you to conform to little adjustments.
Yes. You don't say to me, look, you're dishonest, let's go into it.
I do say that.
No, but go into it so that he's totally honest.
Well, how deeply do I need to go into it so that I have disturbed you totally?
Yeah. So you tell me. Do it now, sir.
Okay, you come in and I in our talks we've noticed that the thing that you are up to is that you are always trying to find some other person to make your life be whole.
Yes, I depend on somebody.
Yes, deeply.
Deeply.
And you don't even know that.
Yes.
So I disturb you. I tell you that
Yeah.
that's what's going on. I show you you're doing it with me.
Yes.
I show you you're doing it with your husband.
Yes.
Now, is that sufficiently deep?
No.
Why?
What have you shown me? A verbal picture.
No, not verbal. Not verbal.
Wait.
Okay.
A verbal picture,
Yeah?
an argument, a thing which tells me that I'm dishonest. Or whatever you tell me. That leaves me where?
Well, if it's verbal, it just gives you more knowledge about yourself.
That's all. Knowledge about myself.
Yeah.
Will knowledge transform me?
No.
No. Be careful, sir. Careful. Then why do I come to you?
Well, not so that I can give you knowledge. You come thinking that maybe somehow I have some answers because other people, because the society is set up
Why
so
don't you tell me, boy, do it yourself, don't depend on me. Go into it. Find out. Stir.
Okay, I tell you that. I tell you, go into it yourself.
Ah.
And you say to me,
I can't do
I
it.
don't know what you're talking about.
That's just it.
Yeah.
So how will you help me to go into myself and not depend on you? You understand my question?
Yes.
Please, I'm not the stage. The only actor. So this is really a serious question. How will you help me to go into myself so deeply that I understand and go beyond? You follow what I mean?
No, I don't follow what you mean. I understand how to help you go into it without depending on me.
I don't want to depend on it. I don't want to depend on anybody.
Okay. I can help you do that. We can discover together that you're depending on me. But I don't know how deeply this has to go.
So you have to inquire into dependence.
Okay?
Why am I depending? Security.
Yeah.
Where is security? Is there such a thing as security?
Well, I have these experiences as I grew up that taught me what security is.
Yes, which is what? A projected idea,
Yes.
a principle,
Yeah.
a belief, a faith, a dogma, or an ideal, which are all projected by me or by you, and I accept those. But they are unreal.
Okay.
So can I push those away?
Yes. And then you're not depressed.
I'm I am dependent, and therefore I get angry, jealousy, all the rest of it. That dependence makes me attached, and that attachment is more, in that attachment there's more fear, there's more anxiety, there's more, you follow?
Yes.
So, can you help me to be free or find out what is true security? Is there a deep, abiding security? Not in furniture, not in a house, not in my wife or in some idea. Found deeply, is there such thing as complete security? Sorry, I'm keeping on the subject.
So you're suggesting that if I simply work on this with you and you come to understand that you're dependent, that that's not sufficient because you won't have discovered any abiding security?
No. Because that's all I want. I've sought security in this house, and it doesn't. There's no security. I've sought security in my wife. There isn't any. Then I changed to another woman, but there isn't any either. Then I find security in a church, in a God, in a belief, in a faith, in some other symbol. So, you see what is happening? You're all externalizing, if I can use that word, giving me security in things in which there are no security, in nations, all the rest of it. Could you help us to find out if there is complete security which is unshakable?
Are you suggesting this is one of our most fundamental needs and drives and activities?
I should think so.
So indeed it's a fundamental question as to whether this sense of abiding, unshakable security is possible.
Yes. Because if once you have that, there is no problem anymore.
Well, this isn't clear because then is it the individual that has that?
No. The individual can never have that security because he is in himself divisive. Operations, illness, and so on and so on. When you talk about being hurt, or you talk about psychological hurts,
Yeah, I'm wondering how it is that when a person comes into my office.
This is one of a series of dialogues between J. Krishnamurti, David Bohm, Rupert Sheldrake, and John Hidley. The purpose of these discussions is to explore essential questions about the mind. What is psychological disorder, and what is required for fundamental psychological change? J. Krishnamurti is a religious philosopher, author, and educator who has written and given lectures on these subjects for many years. He has founded elementary and secondary schools in the United States, England, and India. David Bohm is professor of theoretical physics at Birkbeck College, London University in England. He has written numerous books concerning theoretical physics and the nature of consciousness. Professor Bohm and Mr. Krishnamurti have held previous dialogues on many subjects. Rupert Sheldrake is a biologist whose recently published book proposes that learning in some members of a species affects the species as a whole. Dr. Sheldrake is presently consulting plant physiologist to the International Crops Research Institute in Hyderabad, India. John Hidley is a psychiatrist in private practice who has been associated with the Krishnamurti School in Ojai, California for the past 6 years. In the first dialogue, the nature of the self was discussed, its relationship to suffering, to society, and to religion. Questions raised were, can one discover or learn about these relationships? And is the need for psychological security the root of the problem? Today's discussion continues with these questions.
We talked yesterday, we started with the question of the origin and nature of psychological disorder. And it was suggested that it has its roots in self-centered activity, which is divisive and conflictual in nature. And that biologically, such factors as instinctual aggression and dominance drives, the facts of illness and death, all contribute. I wondered if we could start this morning, David, by having you comment on the relationship between these biological factors and psychological security.
Yes, well, biologically, if you begin with the animal, you have all sorts of things like fear and anger and aggression, and they're fairly simple. They exist for a short period while the effect is there, and then they generally disappear, leaving little trace. There may be a few cases in the higher animals where there's some memory, but it's in man that the memory becomes very significant. Remembering all these experiences and anticipating the future, you get a very different sort of behavior. For example, with an animal, you might have a bad experience with another animal, and shortly afterward he'll be in a fairly good state of equilibrium. But say we have a quarrel between two groups, as in Northern and Southern Ireland. This has been gone on for 350 years, and there's a specific effort to remember it, which you can see going on. I think this is the biggest difference now.
The memory being the biggest difference.
The effect of memory, the consequences of memory. See, memory by itself would obviously not cause any trouble because it's only a fact, right? But
yes.
Memory has consequences. It may produce fear, you see, it may produce anger, it may produce all sorts of disturbances to remember what did happen and to anticipate what may happen.
You mean thinking about it?
Yes, based on memory.
I mean, obviously the animal that's been attacked by another animal remembers in the sense that when it sees the other animal again, it's afraid.
Yeah.
But probably doesn't think about it in between.
Yes, it can't form an image. You see, I don't believe that most animals can form images of the other animals, and I can base that on experience. That I have seen dogs fighting very hard, and as soon as you turn the corner, the dog sort of forgets what happened. He's disturbed, but he doesn't know why he's disturbed, you see. Now, if he could remember it, the other dog, after he turned the corner, he could continue the struggle over territory indefinitely. So the point about territory is the animal maintains it in a certain limited context, but man remembers it, and he maintains this territory indefinitely and wants to extend it and so on because of his thinking about it.
So, sorry.
No, please.
So are you suggesting that the basis of the specifically human kind of pain and suffering, over and above the kind of suffering we see in the animal kingdom, is this ability to remember, to brood over, to think about these
Yes, the animal may have some of that. I've seen examples on television of a deer who lost its doe and it was pining away in the wild, but I think it's limited. That is, there's some suffering of that kind in the animal world, but with man it's enormously expanded. You know, it seems limitless. Yes, I think the major point is that with man, the thing can build up like a tremendous explosion. It fills his whole mind, you see, and it can become the major motive in life, you see, to remember the insult and to, to revenge the vendetta of families over many generations. And to remember the bad experience you had with somebody and to be frightened of what's coming, like the examination that the child may be frightened of or something like that.
But have you answered his question, sir?
Which is?
Which was?
How does the biological fact of illness or death or instinctual drive result in a psychological problem or disorder?
Oh, by thinking about it, I say that the biological fact is not a serious problem in the long run, but as soon as you begin to think about it, and not merely think about it, but make images about it along with that thought, and to revive the memory and anticipate the feeling of the future, And while you're thinking, then it becomes a very serious problem because you can't stop it, you see. You will never attain security by thinking about it, but you're constantly seeking security by, see, the purpose of thinking is to give you security in practical affairs, you know,
Yes.
technical affairs. Now, therefore, you're doing a similar sort of thinking, saying, how can I be secure against the possibility of suffering again? And now that, there's no way to do that. You may take technical steps to make it unlikely, but as you think about it, you begin to stir up the whole system and distort the whole mental process.
Well, it seems clear that by thinking about it, we stir up the emotions and the associations that are those thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not suggesting we shouldn't think about it, are we?
Well, it depends on how you think about it. You see that this thinking gets to be directed toward giving you a sense of security. You see, an image of security.
Right. I get hurt
Yeah.
when I'm little or sometime along the line, and it creates a fear in me, and I anticipate that kind of situation. I may not even remember the incident,
Yeah.
but I want to avoid it in the future.
Yes. And now the point is that the mind is always searching for how to avoid it,
Mm-hmm.
and searching out thoughts, images. You know, saying that fellow is the one who did it, I must keep away from him. You know, coming to conclusions. And if any conclusion gives you an image of security, then the mind holds on to it, right? Without actually any basis.
Could you elaborate on that a little?
Well, if you've had, you know, see, if you've had a bad experience with somebody, you may conclude that you should never trust him again, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that might be quite wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But the mind is so anxious to have security that it will jump to the conclusion that it's not safe to trust him. Mm-hmm. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you find somebody else who seems to treat you well and reassures you and flatters you, then it may jump to the conclusion you can completely trust him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the mind is now looking for thoughts that will give it good feelings, you see, because the feelings of the memory are so disturbing to the whole system that the mind, its first function is to make the mind feel better rather than find out what is the fact.
Okay, so we're saying that at this point the mind isn't interested in what's true, it's interested in getting secure.
Yeah, it's so disturbed that it wants to come to order first, you see, and it's adopting a wrong way as I see it.
The wrong way being?
To think about it and try to find thoughts that will make it feel better.
So you're saying the thoughts themselves are in some sense taking the place of reality, that it's trying to get thoughts, the person is trying to get certain thoughts in his head that make him feel better.
Yeah. And that's self-deception, you see.
But what makes you think that the primary drive is for security?
Oh, we discussed that yesterday, of course, but, well, I wouldn't be sure that's the only primary drive, but it's obviously, for the animal, it's a very important drive to want security. Right? We also want pleasure, and I think that's another drive, which are closely related.
But to come back to this question of security, in its limited forms, security is clearly one goal that we have. I mean, people like to have houses and have them secure, and cars and possessions and bank balances and that kind of thing. But there's this factor that comes in when you've got that. There are two things that come in. One is maybe the fear that you lose it, but the other is boredom with the whole thing and the craving for excitement and thrill. And this doesn't seem to fit within this model of this primary and central craving for security.
Well, that's why I said it's only one of the drives, right? That there's also the drive toward pleasure, as an example, and much of what you said is included in the drive toward pleasure, right?
Well, I'm not so sure.
Excitement is pleasurable. I mean, people hope for pleasure and excitement rather than pain, as a rule.
But don't you think there's a pleasure in itself in curiosity, and there's a sense of freedom and discovery that you can get from certain kinds of exploration, which is neither just straightforward pleasure, it's not a repetitive kind of pleasure, nor is it security.
Yes, well, I didn't want to say that all our drives are caught in this thing. You see, I said that if you think about them and base them on memory, then they're going to get caught in this problem. Now, there may be a natural, free interest in things, which could be enjoyable, and that need not be a problem, right? But if you were to become dependent on it and think about it and say, if I don't have it, I become very unhappy, then it would be a similar problem.
But could we go into the question, what is security? What does that word convey? Apart from physical security.
I would have said invulnerability.
Not to be hurt.
Not to be hurtable, not to be able to be hurt.
Not to be able to be hurt, and not to hurt. Physically, we are all hurt, some one way or another.
Yeah.
Operations, illness, and so on and so on. When you talk about being hurt, or you talk about psychological hurts,
Yeah, I'm wondering how it is that when a person comes into my office, his complaint is his psychological hurts. And
how do you deal with it?
I try.
Suppose I come to you, I'm hurt from childhood.
Yeah.
I'm hurt by the parents, school, college, university.
Yes.
When I get married, she says something, I'm hurt.
Yes.
So this whole living process seems to be a series of hurts.
It seems to build up a structure of self that is hurt.
Yes.
And a perception of reality that is inflicting hurt.
Now, how do you deal with it?
I try to help you see that that's I try to help you see how you're doing it.
What do you mean, how do you?
Well, for example, if you have built up in you the notion that you're one down, or that you're the victim, then you perceive yourself to be victimized, and you perceive the world to be a victimizer. And I help you realize that that's what you're doing.
But by showing me that, will I get rid of my hurt? My hurts, very deep, unconscious hurts that make me do all kinds of peculiar actions, neurotic.
Well, if you don't just...
Isolating myself.
Yes. It appears that people get better, that they realize that they are doing it. And in some local area, it seems to help.
No, but aren't you concerned, if I may ask, with not being able to hurt at all?
Yes.
What do you mean by that? Not hurting somebody else or not hurting, but being hurt inside of you?
No, I may hurt others unconsciously, unwillingly, but I wouldn't hurt voluntarily somebody.
Yeah, you really don't intend to hurt anybody.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Well, maybe not, but I don't see the connection between not hurting other people and not being hurt oneself. Or at least I'm sure there must be one, but it's not obvious. And most people's view of the best way not to be hurt would be to be in such a position that you can hurt others so much they'd never dare. And this is the principle of nuclear retaliation. I mean, this is a very common principle.
Yes, of course.
And so it's not obvious that not hurting others is related to not being hurt oneself. In fact, usually it's taken to be the reverse. It's usually assumed that if you're in a position to hurt others very much, you'll be very secure.
Of course, I mean, if you're a king or a sannyasi or one of those people who have built a wall around themselves.
Yes.
Naturally, you could never hurt them.
Yes.
But when they were children, they were hurt.
Yes.
That hurt remains. It may remain superficially or in the deep recesses of one's own mind. Now, how do you, as a psychologist, psychotherapist, or help another who is deeply hurt and is unaware of it, and to see if it is possible not to be hurt at all?
I don't address the question about is it possible to not be hurt at all. That doesn't come up.
Why? Wouldn't that be a reasonable question?
Well, it seems to be what we're asking here. It is the essence of the question that we're asking. We ask it in terms of particulars only in therapy. And you're asking it more generally. Is it possible to end this hurt, period? Not just a particular hurt that I happen to have.
So how should we proceed?
Well, it would seem that the structure that makes hurt possible is what we have to get at. What makes hurt possible in the first place, not this hurt or that hurt.
Well, I think that's fairly simple. Why am I hurt? Because you say something to me which is not pleasant.
Well, why should that hurt you?
Because I have an image about myself as being a great man. You come along and tell me, don't be an ass, and I get hurt.
What is it that's being hurt there?
There, the image which I have about myself. I'm a great cook, a great scientist, a great carpenter, whatever you will. I've got that picture in myself, and you come along and put a pin into it. And that gets hurt. The image gets hurt. The image is me.
Well, I feel that will not be terribly clear to many people. I mean, how can I be an image? You see, many people will ask, you see, how can an image get hurt? Because if an image is nothing at all, why does it hurt?
Because I've invested in that image a lot of feeling.
Yes.
A lot of ideas, emotions, reactions. All that is me. That's my image.
It doesn't look like an image to me, though. It looks like something real.
That of course, for most people is very real.
Yeah.
But that is me. The reality of that image is me.
Yes. Well, can we get clear that it's an image and not real?
Image is never real. Symbol is never real.
You're saying that I'm just a symbol.
Perhaps.
That's a big step.
From that arises the question whether it's possible not to have images at all.
Well, wait a minute. I don't think we've clearly established that I am an image.
Let's go into it.
I mean, it's not entirely clear. I mean, it's obvious that to some extent one is an image, that I have a feeling about myself and so on. It's not entirely clear that this is entirely unjustified. You see, certain aspects of it may be exaggerated, certain aspects may be unrealistic. But, you see, one approach would be, well, we've got to shave off these unrealistic aspects, pare it down to a sort of reasonable size, and then that which remains would be the real thing.
So are you raising the question, what am I?
Well, I suppose so, yes.
Yes, basically. What are you? What is each one of us? What is a human being? That's a question that involves.
Yes, it seems unavoidable.
Yes. What am I? I am the form, the physical form, the name, the result of all education.
Your experience.
My experiences, my beliefs, my ideals, principles, the incidents that have marked me.
The structures you've built up that are how you function, your skills.
My fears, my activities, whether they are limited or my so-called affection, my gods, my country, my language, fears, pleasures, suffering, all that's me.
Yes.
That's my consciousness.
And your unconscious.
I mean, that's my whole content of me.
Okay.
But there's still that feeling of actuality that me is there. You see, I mean, you may say you could reasonably argue that that's all there is to me, but when something happens, there's the feeling of its actual presence, right, at that moment.
I don't quite follow
Well, you
that.
see, if somebody reacts to being hurt or angry, he feels at that moment that there's more than that. You see, that there's something deep inside which has been hurt, right?
I don't quite see what is, my image can be such deep, that's my image at all levels.
Yes.
So I have an image about myself,
Yeah.
suppose,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm a great poet, or a great painter, or a great writer. Apart from that image, as a writer, I have other images about myself. I have an image about my wife, and she has an image about me. There are so many images I've built around myself, and the image about myself also.
Yes.
So I'm a bundle of images.
Yes, I understand.
Partial.
Yes, that you're saying that there's nothing but this bundle of images.
Of course.
But this will, the question is, how are we to see this as an actual fact? You see, that is...
But wait a minute, there is something about this bundle of images. I mean, I'm sitting right here now, seeing you and all the rest of it. Now, I have the feeling that there's a center of action or center of consciousness which is within my body and associated with it, which has a center, and it's not you, and it's not you, it's not David, it's me. And associated with this center of action, my body, sitting here, is a whole lot of memories and experiences, and without those memories I wouldn't be able to speak, to talk, to recognize anything, and so on. So there seems to be some substance to this image of myself. I mean, there may be false images associated with it, but there seems to be a reality which I feel as I sit here.
So
it's not entirely an
Are
illusion.
you saying that you're totally, basically different from the three of us?
Well, I'm in a different place, and I have a different body.
Of course.
And in that sense, I'm different.
Of course, I admit that. I mean, you're tall, I'm short, or I'm brown,
Yes.
you're black, or you're white, or you're pink, or whatever it is.
Now, at another level, I'm not basically different in the sense that we can all speak the same language and communicate, so there's something in common.
Yes.
And at a purely physical level, all of us have a lot in common with each other, the same kinds of enzymes, chemicals, and so on. And those, indeed, hydrogen atoms, oxygen atoms, we have in common with everything else.
Yeah. Now, is your consciousness different from the rest? Conscious, not bodily responses, bodily reactions, bodily conditioning. Is your consciousness, your beliefs, your fears, your anxieties, depressions, faith, all that?
Well, I would say that many of the contents of my consciousness, or many of the beliefs, desires, etc., I have, other people also have. But I would say the particular combination of experiences, memories, desires, etc., I have are unique, because I've had a particular set of experiences as you have and as everyone has, which makes a unique combination of these different elements.
So is mine unique?
Yes.
So is you.
Exactly.
But the uniqueness makes it all common. It's no longer unique.
That's a paradox. It's not immediately clear.
Why isn't it clear? I mean, everybody's unique, right?
Yes, we're all unique.
I question that.
But we're not unique in the same way. Otherwise, the word unique becomes meaningless.
What? Otherwise,
If we're unique, each of us is unique. We have a unique set of experiences, environmental factors, memories, etc.
That's, you just now said that's common lot to all of us.
Yes, we all have it. But what we have is different.
Yes, you brought up in England,
Yes.
and perhaps another brought up in America, another brought up in Chile. We all have different experiences.
Yes.
Different country, different views, different mountains, and so on.
Yes.
But apart from the physical environment, linguistic differences, and accidents of experience. But basically, fundamentally, deep down, we suffer. We are frightened to death. We are anxious. We are agonizing about something or other. And conflict, that's the ground on which we all stand.
But that doesn't seem a very startling conclusion.
No, it is not.
But I think, say that what you're saying really implies that what we have in common is essential and fundamental rather than just superficial. You see, now I've talked with people about this, and they say everybody agrees we all have these things in common, but sorrow, suffering, and so on are not so important. The really important point are the higher achievements of culture and things like that, as an example.
Maybe the distinction is between the form and the content. Our contents are all different, and they have similarities and differences, but maybe the form is the same, the structure.
I would say content are the same for all human beings.
But you see, I can recognize that there's such a thing as common humanity, but I would regard that as quite possibly an abstraction or a projection rather than a reality. How do I know that's not an abstraction?
Because you go around the world, you see people suffer. You see human beings in agony, despair, depression, loneliness, lack of affection, lack of care, attention. That's the basic human reactions, basic human, that's part of our consciousness.
Yes.
So you are not basically different from me. You're tall, you may be born in England, I may be born in Africa with dark skin, but deep down the river, the content of the water of the river is the water. The river is not Asiatic river or European river, it's a river.
Yes, well, that's clearly true at some level, but I'm not quite sure at what level, you see.
I'm talking basically, deeply.
But you see, it seems to me, why stop there? That I can see something in common with all other human beings. But I can also, by looking at animals, see something in common with them. We have a great deal in common with the animals.
Sure.
So why stop at human beings? Why not say...
Because I say if I feel... I don't like the word common, that sounds... one feels that is the ground on which all human beings stand. Their relationship with nature, animals and so on. And that the content of our consciousness is, again, the ground of humanity. Love is not English, American, or Indian. Hate is not. Agony is not yours or mine, agony. But we identify ourselves with agony. It's my agony, which is not yours.
We might go through it in very different ways, though.
Different expressions, different reactions, but basically it's agony. Not German agony and Asiatic agony. It's not what is happening, British and Argentine. It's human conflict. Why do we separate ourselves from all this? The British, the Argentine, the Jew, the Arab, the Hindu, the Muslim, you follow? Which all seems so nonsensical, tribal. The worship of a nation is tribalism. So why can't we wipe out all that?
I don't know. You tell me. Why can't we?
Because, again, we'll come back to the question. I identify with my nation because that gives me a certain strength, certain standard, certain status, certain security. When I say I'm a British, oof. So this division is one of the reasons of war. Not only economic, social, and all the rest of it. Nationalism, which is really glorified tribalism, is cause of war. Why can't we wipe that out? Seems so reasonable.
It seems reasonable on a level like nationalism. People don't think they're England.
Start from there.
Okay. But then I have a patient, and he does think that he's married. And
He's
that it's-
American. What?
and that he's married, and that it's his wife,
Yes.
and that,
Of course he's wife.
well,
So
isn't
what?
that the same action that you're talking about?
No. So just let's go into slowly.
Okay.
Why do I want to identify myself with something greater?
Because I'm not
Like
sufficient.
nationalism, like God,
I don't feel sufficient.
which means what?
Insecure.
Insecure,
Anxious.
insufficient,
Yes.
lonely,
Yes.
isolated.
Uh-huh.
I've built a wall around myself.
Yeah.
So all this is making me desperately lonely. And out of that conscious or unconscious loneliness, I identify with God, with nation, with Mussolini, doesn't matter, Hitler, or any religious teacher.
Okay, or I get married, I have a job, I make a place for myself.
Yes,
And that's all also identification.
yes. Why do we want to identify with something? No, basic question is too, why do we want roots?
To belong.
To belong, which is also implied to become.
Yes.
So this whole process of becoming, from childhood, I'm asked to become.
Mm-hmm.
From the priest to the bishop, bishop to the cardinal, cardinal to the pope.
Mm-hmm.
In the business world it is the same.
Mm-hmm.
In the spiritual world it is the same. I am this, but I must become that.
Okay, what I am is
Why
not
this?
sufficient.
Why do we want to become? What is it that's becoming? I don't. Sorry.
Well, and the obvious reason for wanting to become is a feeling of insufficiency, inadequacy in the state that we are. And one of the reasons for this is that we live in an imperfect world. Our relations with other people are imperfect. We're not content for a variety of reasons with the way we are. So the way out of that seems to be to become something else.
Yeah, so why not? You see, that means escaping from what is.
Yes, but it may seem that what is something we have a need to escape from. There's something wrong
So why
with
not?
it.
All right, take the usual experience. I'm violent. And I have invented non-violence. Right? And I'm trying to become that. And I'll take years to become that. In the meantime, I'm violent. So I've never escaped from violence. Just an invention.
Well, you're trying to escape from it. You may escape in the end.
No, I don't want to escape. I want to understand the nature of violence, what's implied in it, whether it's possible to live a life without any sense of violence.
But what you're suggesting is a more effective method of escaping. You're not suggesting an abandoning of the idea of escaping. You're suggesting that the normal way of escaping, trying to become non-violent, is one way of doing it which doesn't work. Whereas if you do another method, where you actually look at the violence in a different way, you can become non-violent.
Escaping.
Well, you're changing then.
No, I am violent.
Yes.
I want to see what's the nature of violence, how it arises,
But for what purpose?
to see whether it's possible to be free of it completely.
But isn't that a kind of escape
No.
from it? Being free of something
is not an escape.
Why not?
Avoidance, running away, fly away from what is an escape. But to say, look, this is what I am, let's look at it. Let's observe what its content is. That's not escape.
Oh, I see. The distinction you're making is that if you run away, an escape in the normal sense is running away from something, like escaping from prison or one's parents or whatever. Yes. But they still remain there. What you're saying is that to escape, rather than escaping from violence, which leaves violence intact and still there, and you try and distance yourself from it, you try to dissolve violence or abolish it.
Yeah, dissolve.
Yes.
Not abolish it, dissolve.
All right. So this is different from escape because you're trying to dissolve the thing rather than run away from it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So running away is everybody runs away.
Well, it usually works to a limited extent.
No, it's like running away from my agony by going to football. I come back home, it's there.
Mm.
I don't want to go to watch football, but I want to see what violence is and see if it is possible to completely be free of it.
Mm. If I'm in a very unpleasant society and I can escape from it by defecting or leaving it and going to another one. And this does, in fact, mean that I escape to some extent. So these are always partial answers and they're partially effective.
But I don't want partially violent or partially free from it. I want to find out if it's possible to be totally ended. That's not an escape, that's putting my teeth into it.
Yes. But you have to believe it's possible in order to put your teeth into it.
I'm going to investigate. I said, for me, I know what one can live without violence.
Mm.
But that may be a freak, that may be a biological freak and so on. But to discuss together, four of us, and see if we could be free of violence completely means not escaping, not suppressing, not transcending it.
Mm-hmm.
And see what is violence.
Mm-hmm.
Violence is part of imitation, conformity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Part is physical, that are not conformity. So psychologically there's this constant comparing. That's part of hurt, part of violence. So can I live without comparison? When from childhood I've been trained to compare myself with somebody. I'm talking comparison, not good cloth and bad cloth.
Right. Talking about comparing myself.
Myself. With you who are bright, who are clever, who have got publicity, who got... When you say a word, the whole world listens, and I can shout, nobody cares. So I want to be like you. So I'm comparing constantly with myself with something I think is greater.
So this is where becoming comes from, this comparison.
That's just it. So can I live without comparison?
And doesn't that leave me in the insufficient state?
No. To live without comparison?
Yes.
No.
Well, here I start off
then
insufficient.
You understand, sir? Am I dull because I compare myself with you?
Yes.
You're bright?
Yes, you're dull because you compare yourself.
If by comparing myself with you, who are bright, who are clever, I become dull. I think I'm dull.
Yes.
But if I don't compare,
then
I am not here.
Well, you may not compare, but I may compare. I may say, you're dull.
All right. I say, all right. You say you're dull. I say, am I? I want to know what does it mean. Does it mean he's comparing himself with me, who is, you follow?
See,
the reverse of it.
It'd be very frustrating, that. Yes. I mean, if one compared oneself with somebody and said, you're dull,
yes.
And then they said, what does dullness mean? Yes.
The other day, after one of the talks in England, a man came up to me and said, "Sir, you are a beautiful old man, but you're stuck in a rut." I said, "Perhaps, I don't know, we'll go into it." So I went up to my room and said, "Am I?" Because I don't want to be stuck in a rut. I may be. So I went into it very, very carefully, step by step, and found, what does a rut mean? Sticking a groove along a particular line, maybe. So I watch it. So observation of a fact is entirely different from the escaping or suppression of a fact.
So he says you're stuck in a rut and you observe it, you don't compare.
I don't know what, am I in a rut? I look. I'm stuck in a rut because I speak English. I speak Italian and French. All right, that's not rust. Am I psychologically, inwardly caught in a groove? Like a tram car.
Just motivated by something and not understanding it.
Yeah. No, am I? I don't know.
Yes.
I'm going to find out. I'm going to watch. I'm going to be terribly attentive, sensitive, alert.
Now this requires that you not react in the first place by saying, "No, that's horrible, I couldn't possibly be stuck in a rut."
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
You may be telling the truth.
Well,
But then
to not have that reaction, excuse me,
Sorry, go on.
to not have that reaction, you can't have that self there that says, "I'm not the type of person that's stuck in ruts."
I don't know. So, is there a learning about oneself which is not, this is something else I must go into, which is not constant accumulation about myself? I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Yes. You're saying that...
I observe myself. And I've learned from that observation, something. And that something is being accumulated too all the time by watching. I think that's not learning about yourself.
Yeah. It's being concerned with what you think about yourself.
Yeah, what you think about yourself, what you have gathered about yourself.
Yeah.
It's like a river that's flowing. You have to follow it. I mean, that leads somewhere else. Let's get back to...
Well, no, maybe this is part of the question we're asking, because we start with, how does this disorder occur? And
yes, sir, let's stick to that.
It occurs because I have the image of myself as someone who knows he's not stuck in a rut. I don't like to think that I'm stuck in a rut. And somebody says, "Yes, you are."
But you may be.
Yes. I have to be open to looking to see.
Yeah, to observe.
But then what about this approach? Somebody says I'm stuck in a rut. I look at myself and think, yes, I am stuck in a rut. And then I can respond by saying, well, what's wrong with that? Everyone's stuck in a rut.
That means you're just blind.
No, you accept the fact, but then you think, well, why should I do anything about it?
Well,
what's wrong with that as an approach?
Like a man stuck as a Hindu. He's stuck. He's then contributing to war.
Well, I may say, well, I'm stuck in a rut, but says everybody. It's the nature of humanity to be stuck in ruts.
You see, that's it. You go off, that's the nature of humanity.
Yes.
But I question that.
I would say everyone else is stuck in ruts.
If you say that's the nature of humanity, let's change it, for God's sake.
But you may believe it's unchangeable. You see, what reason have I for believing that we can change it? I may think that I'm stuck in a rut, so are you, and so is everybody else. And anyone who thinks they're not is deceiving themselves.
Is cheating themselves.
Yes.
I may cheat, so I begin to inquire, am I cheating myself? I want to be very honest about it. I don't want to cheat. I don't want to be a hypocrite.
But you may not be a hypocrite. You may think I am stuck in a rut, and you may be a pessimist. You see, the alternative to being a hypocrite is a pessimist, or one alternative.
No, I'm neither a pessimist or an optimist. I say, look, am I stuck in a rut?
Mm.
I watch all day.
And you perhaps conclude yes. But then you can take the pessimistic course and say, yes, I am, but say what?
Oh, yes, if you prefer that way of living, go ahead. But I don't want to live that way.
Well, the person who comes into therapy usually comes with both sides going on at the same time. Mm-hmm. He says that I have this problem which I want to be free of. I don't want to be stuck in a rut. On the other hand, when it gets down to really looking at that, he doesn't want to look at it either because it becomes uncomfortable.
Of course.
Yeah.
So, to come back to our original question, the world is in disorder.
Yes.
Human beings are disorder. And we describe what is disorder. Mm-hmm. And is there a possibility to live free from disorder? That's a real basic question. Mm-hmm. We said as long as there is this divisive process of life, I'm a Hindu, you're an Arab, mm-hmm. I'm a Buddhist, you're a Muslim, I'm British, you're Argentine, mm-hmm. and so on. There must be conflict, war. My son is going to be killed. For what?
Mm-hmm. Or as long as I identify on a personal level with my job or with my family or so on, there will be pain.
Of course.
It's the same process.
So, is it possible to have, without identification, responsibility?
If I'm not identified, will I even go to work?
Yeah, but I'm responsible for the lady whom I married. Mm-hmm. Responsible in the sense that I have to look after her, care for her, she has to care for her. It's a responsibility means order. Mm-hmm. But we have become totally irresponsible by isolating ourselves, British, French, follow?
We handle the problem of responsibility by developing a rut that we can work in.
Yes, that's it.
And staying inside there.
If I recognize, see the fact that responsibility is order, mm-hmm. I'm responsible to keep this house clean. And you are, as we all live in this earth, it's our earth, not British earth and French earth and German earth. It's our earth mm-hmm. to live on. And we have divided ourselves. Mm-hmm. Because in this division, we think there's security.
Mm-hmm. There's stability and security.
Security, which is no security at all.
Well, it isn't clear. We got to go slow because I think that my job is security. I think that my family is security.
You may lose it.
Mm-hmm. That problem keeps coming up.
Unemployment in America and England. Mm-hmm. There are 3 million people unemployed in England.
Well, maybe I could get by without my job, but I need to think that I have some self-respect. I need to...
What do you mean self-respect?
Well, what I'm trying to say is that there's some place at which I put an identification.
Why should I want to identify with anything, sir, that makes immediate isolation? Mm-hmm.
For stability's sake.
Does isolation bring about stability?
It gives one a sense of something hard and firm.
Yeah. Does it? Has it? We have had, in the last 5 years, 5,000 years, nearly 5,000 war. Mm-hmm. Is that stability?
No.
Why don't we well, I won't go into all that. What's wrong with us?
Well, why don't we see this then? You're saying that the root of the problem is that I continue to identify with one thing after another. If one doesn't work, I just find something else. I don't stop identifying.
Yes, sir, that which breeds isolation.
Mm-hmm. But in your example about the person that's stuck in a rut, you say, I don't have to identify. I can just step back and look at this thing and see if it's true.
Yes.
So you're suggesting that there is something that is not identified, something that's free to look.
Now, this leads to something else. Why do I want to identify myself? Probably, basically, the desire to be secure,
Mm-hmm.
to be safe, to be protected, to...
Mm-hmm.
And that sense of gives me strength.
Mm-hmm. Strength and purpose, direction.
It gives me strength.
Yeah.
But this is a biological fact.
Yes,
and
sir,
it's not
I know.
merely an illusion. And if we, again, to come back to the animal kingdom, we see it there. Deer go around in flocks, birds have flocks, bees have hives, and they're identified with the hive in which they work.
But the bees don't kill themselves. Species don't kill themselves.
Well, they kill each other. They kill other bees that invade their hive.
But
They don't commit suicide, but they kill other ones.
we are.
Well, yes and no. I mean, bees do fight other bees
Of course,
that come
I know
into the
that.
hive.
I've raised bees, I know.
So there is, we see even in the animal kingdom, this identification with the group in the social animals.
Yes,
there are many
sir.
social
Just
animals.
a minute.
And we're social.
Agree. Are we, by identifying ourselves with India or China or Germany, is that giving us security?
To a limited extent it is. And by identifying ourselves with our families does, because this whole question of responsibility seems closely linked to it. If I identify myself with my family, feel duties and so on towards them, protect if my sister's insulted, I rush to her defense and make a big fuss about it and threaten, if not actually kill, the people
We
who
too
insult
probably
her.
have
and
no
so on.
sisters.
Yes, fortunately. So, if I protect members of my family and defend them, rush to their defense, so an insult to them or an attack to them is an insult to me, so I rush to their defense. There's a reciprocal obligation on them. If I fall ill or sick, they'll feed me and look after me. If I get arrested by the police, they'll try and get me out of prison, and so on. So it does give me a kind of security. It actually works.
Of course.
And that's very good reason for doing it for most
But
people.
stretch it further from the family to the community to the nation, so on, so on. That's a vast process of isolating. You are English, I'm German, and we are a teacher's throat. And I said, for God's sake, this is so damn stupid.
Well, it's not entirely stupid, because it works to a certain
It
extent.
is most impractical. It may work, but it's impractical. It's killing each other.
Well, we haven't killed each other yet. There are more human beings than there ever have been before. So the system so far has gone on to the point where, far from killing each other, we've actually got to the point where we've got a bigger population than the world's ever seen in its whole past. So the system works only too well, for some reason.
So you propose war to kill all?
No. But there's some aspect of it that does work, and some security that's genuine that these things confer.
Yes, sir. At certain level, identification has certain importance, right? But at a higher level, if you can call it higher, it becomes dangerous. That's all we're saying. Of course, if you're my brother, you look out to me.
It's very hard to draw the line. You see, that starts spreading out.
That's right, spreading out.
You know, it slips.
That's what I'm saying, objecting.
But you see, the question is, where do you draw the line? Because if you're my brother, then you have the tribe or the clan, or in India, the caste.
That's it.
Yeah, you
That's
have your
it.
friends.
And then
Extend it.
extends.
And then we say, I am Argentine, you are British, he's French, and we are economically, socially, culturally, we're murdering each other. And I said, but that's so insane.
But where do you draw the line? You see, if you say the nation state is wrong, then what's wrong with the tribe or the caste? Then you've got conflict between those.
No,
you've got conflict between families.
I won't draw the line. I say I'm responsible as a human being for what is happening in the world. Because I'm a human. And so what is happening in the world is this terrible division. And I won't be a Hindu. I won't be a Catholic, Protestant, Buddhist, nothing. If 100 people or 1,000 people like that would begin to do something.
So you're saying that the problem comes up because I mistake my local security. I think that it rests in some local identification.
Yes, which is isolation. And therefore, in isolation, there is no security. And therefore, there is no order.